To make an easy crochet one-day sweater that is totally doable even for beginners, I would recommend starting with a super chunky yarn because it works up faster. I like this Lion Brand Hometown yarn. This is the color Houston Cream. It is a size 6 super bulky yarn, and the label recommends a hook size of 9mm. I have played around a lot with this yarn, and I think for this sweater I will be using a 10mm hook because it gives a slightly looser stitch. This is a Susan Bates 10mm hook. It's the only 10mm hook that I've tried. I do think I would like to try other 10mm hooks, but this is just the one I have in my kit. You will also need a pair of scissors, and I like to have a tape measure at all times when I'm doing these quick wearable projects because you can measure as you go along. And I always have some stitch markers and a stitch counter on hand just in case. Here is the plan I've made for this sweater. I am going to do a foundation chain of 38 stitches, and this is how I will divide up the rectangular yoke. So 6 stitches on each side for the shoulder, 11 in the back, 11 in the front, and then 1 increase stitch for each corner. When I start a yoke, I like to start with a foundation single crochet instead of a chain. Now, this is not the most common way to start a yoke, but I do find that it makes it a little bit easier to work those first few rows, which traditionally I find to be kind of fiddly and difficult to work. So let me show you how to do that. So we're going to start the yoke with a slip knot. Place the slip knot on the hook and chain twice. Insert your hook under 2 loops in the first chain, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2. That is your first foundation single crochet. It's at this point where I kind of like to tighten that slip knot so I don't get it confused. And this is what it looks like on the top and on the bottom. Let's do it again. We're going to do this a total of 38 times. So that was 1. So to make a foundation single crochet, you insert your hook under 2 loops in the chain, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2. Again, insert your hook under 2, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2. That's the third one. You can always keep count by looking at the bottom. See, there are 3. Insert your hook in the chain, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2. That's 4. We're going to do this 34 more times, and I will speed up and meet you at the end. So I have now done 38 foundation single crochet stitches. You can see that it looks pretty substantial, and this is why I like using foundation single crochet, because it's easy to hold on to this and work with this, whereas if you just do a chain, it's a little bit flimsy, it's easy to get twisted. The reason I made 38 foundation single crochet stitches is because I have a giant head. It measures 24 inches around, and I wanted a collar that would fit over my neck. You don't have to do 38 foundation single crochets. I would recommend using your tape measure and measuring your head to make sure you create a collar that fits over your head. So let's measure this and we'll take a look. So unstretched, this foundation chain measures 22 inches, and to be honest, I could probably go a little bit shorter because when you stretch it, it stretches way beyond 24 inches. But we are going to add a little bit of a rib on top of this to finish, so I think this is actually fine to start with. This is where the foundation single crochet comes in really handy, because it's really easy to tell here that you're not twisting the row. If you have a chain, sometimes it's really hard to tell if you're twisting the row. We're going to slip stitch into the first chain, pull that through, and pull that through. And look, you can easily tell that it's not twisted. Let's chain 1 to join. We're going to double crochet 6 before we increase in a corner. So let's do 6 double crochets. Yarn over, insert your hook, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Again, yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. 4 more times. So we have done 6 double crochets, and in the next stitch we're going to do 3 double crochets in that single stitch. Oftentimes in top-down raglan sweaters, you'll see patterns ask for an increase stitch where you do 1 stitch and then you chain and then you do another stitch. But what I find is that with really chunky yarn, that creates a giant hole in the sweater, and then you have holes running down the fronts and backs of your sweaters, which can kind of look funny. I think that works really well for DK and lighter yarn, but for chunky yarns, I prefer this particular increase. So we're going to do 3 double crochets in this stitch. So it's 1, 2, 3. At this point, if this is your first time doing this type of increase, I would recommend putting a stitch marker in the second stitch, which is the middle of that increase, just to mark it for the next row. Now we're going to do 11 stitches across in double crochet. Now we're going to do the same kind of increase that we did the last time we increased. This will create another corner. So we're going to do 3 double crochets in 1 stitch. So it's this stitch is the next stitch. We're going to do 1, 2, 3. You can take a stitch marker and place it in the second stitch. It's the middle of the 3 you just did. Now we're going to do 6 double crochets. 6. And now we're going to create another corner by increasing in the next stitch. So again, 3 double crochets in the next stitch. 1, 2, 3. And you can place a stitch marker in that second double crochet in that stitch. The last segment of our first row, we're going to do 11 across and then do another increase. In our last stitch in the first row, we're going to put 3 double crochets. Let's put a stitch marker in that second double crochet of the increase. Now let's join to the first double crochet stitch in that row. So let's figure that out. It's up here. So you insert your hook, pull through, and then pull through the stitch you just made. Now we're going to chain 1 just to close that off so we can take a look at what we've done so far. So it's just starting to take shape, but we've only done 1 row. You can sort of see what we're doing. We're creating corners here, 2 corners in the front, 2 corners in the back. This is what it looks like from the top. And what happens is that you will continue to increase in these corners and the project will grow this way. And when we get to a certain point, we'll split off this part, which will become the sleeves, from the body part. But look how much progress you've made with just one row. So we're going to start the second row very similarly to how we started the first row. So we chained one at the end of that row after doing the slip stitch, so we're going to do another chain just to make it the same height as a double crochet. Second row, we are going to double crochet until right before you hit the stitch where you put your first stitch marker. In the stitch where you've put the stitch marker, this is where we're doing our increase. So we will put 3 double crochets in this stitch. Now to do that, you need to take the stitch marker out, but don't get rid of it just yet because we're going to need it in a moment. So let's put 3 double crochets into that one stitch. 1, 2, 3, and we're going to put the stitch marker again in the second stitch of that increase because that's where we'll be putting the next increase. For the next section, we're going to repeat double crochet once in every stitch until right before you get to the next stitch marker. If you are using the same stitch count that I am, you will have done 13 double crochets. In the stitch where you've placed the stitch marker, take the stitch marker out and do 3 double crochets in that stitch. This is your increase and your corner. Replace the stitch marker in the second stitch of that increase. And we're going to do the same for the next section. Double crochet in every stitch until you get to the next stitch marker. If you're doing the same stitch count that I am, you will have done 8 double crochets. You know the drill by now. Take out that stitch marker and do 3 double crochets in that single stitch. This is another increase corner. 1, 2, 3. Replace the stitch marker in the second double crochet. That's where you're going to make your next increase next row. For the final section of the second row, do the same, double crochet in every stitch until you get to your last row stitch marker. If you have done the same stitch count that I have, you will have just done 13 double crochets. You know what to do here. Take out that stitch marker and do 3 double crochets in that stitch. 1, 2, 3. Now replace your stitch marker in the second stitch of that increase. Join to the first stitch in your row with a slip stitch. So slip your hook through, yarn over, pull through 1, and then pull through the stitch you just made. Let's chain 2 to get ready for the next row. Let's take a look at what we've done so far. You can see the yoke starting to develop and the corners are becoming a little bit more defined. You can see it turns there and does the same in the back. There's a little angle there. Hopefully this is starting to make a little bit more sense. So we are going to just keep going. Every single row, double crochet, increase, which means do 3 stitches in every stitch where you've put a marker. Then remember to put the marker back in the second stitch and you'll see your piece continue to grow. Because this is such a chunky yarn and we are using such a large hook and a big stitch, a double crochet is a very big and generous stitch. This sweater will grow so fast, which is why it is entirely possible to make this sweater in one day. Let's do row 3. Double crochet all the way until you reach your next stitch marker. In that stitch, increase by doing 3 double crochets in the same stitch. 1, 2, 3. Replace the stitch marker in the second stitch. Now we're going to do the next section where you double crochet until you get here and then do 3 stitches in that stitch. In the stitch with the stitch marker, you're going to make 3 double crochets in that same stitch. And then replace the stitch marker in the second stitch, ready for the next row increase. Next section, again, double crochet all the way across until you get to the stitch where you put your stitch marker. In the stitch where you've put the stitch marker, place 3 double crochets in that one stitch. 1, 2, 3. Replace the stitch marker in the second stitch of that increase. The last part of the row, you do the same thing, a double crochet in every stitch, and then increase, put 3 double crochets in that stitch marker stitch. One, 2, 3. Replace the stitch marker in the second stitch of that increase. Slip stitch into the first stitch to join. Chain 2. Let's take a look. What's so exciting about this particular way of constructing a sweater is that you see the results so quickly. So look, it is really starting to take shape, and you can start to see very clearly where the increases are happening. What's great about this way of doing increases, like I mentioned, is that you don't get those little holes there, where if you chained and were increasing in a chain space, you would get pretty big gaps there that would actually stretch out over time as you wear the sweater. We're gonna keep going, probably, I don't know, 5 more rows. Let's take a look. Let's see how it goes. This is a little bit of a play it by ear situation too. And this is why a tape measure is so important, because you can measure as you go along to make sure it fits you or make sure it fits the person you are making it for. So we're going to do the third row, which is double crochet until you get to the stitch marker. Again, at the stitch marker, put 3 double crochets in that stitch. 1, 2, 3. Replace the stitch marker in the second stitch of that increase. We're going to keep going, double crochet in every stitch. Now we're going to increase again in that stitch. And replace the stitch marker in the second stitch of that increase. Double crochet until you get to the stitch marker. increase in that stitch. Replace the stitch marker in the second stitch. Double crochet until the next stitch marker. Increase. Four rows, and look how far we've come. You can see how it's so easy to finish this sweater in one day. We're going to keep going until row 7 or 8, probably row 7. We'll check back at row 7 to see what this piece looks like and how big it needs to be. Okay, I am in the middle of row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm done with the first skein of Hometown yarn. So I thought, just in case, I'm going to show you how I just join the skeins, and I do it in the most basic beginner way because I'm a beginner. Here's a new skein, and I need to find the end. There is an end that sticks out here on the side, but if I can, I try to find the end that is from the center of the ball, which is usually, I mean, this is, I've learned a few crochet terms, and this is called like yarn barf, where you can't find the other end and you have to pull out the entire center. Okay, so here is the end of a new skein. This is the end of the old skein, and to join the two ends, I've seen people do it in a million different ways. I just do it in the most obvious and basic way. I used to do a knot that was just like, I put the two together and I would tie a knot like that, but that knot was really bulky and it would stick out. So now I tie a square knot, which is you take one side and you cross over to the front and you just do that like you're tying shoelaces. Now take the opposite side and put that over the front this time. And tighten that. And I like to do this twice. So one side over the front, other side over the front. And I like to pull it as tight as possible. And this still looks a little bit chunky, but this is also because this is a super chunky yarn. And with my scissors, I will clip the ends pretty close to that knot. And then you just keep going. Okay, so we're at the end of row 7. We're going to slip stitch to close. And I just want to take a look at how big this is. So I'm just going to pop a little stitch marker in here so it doesn't pull out. And let's take a look at what 7 rows gets us. So this is 7 rows. I'm just going to move the camera a little bit so we have a bit more space. This is 7 rows, and I can show you what the measurement is. So from neck to armpit, it is 9 inches. Now don't worry if this isn't exactly what your neck to armpit measurement is, because as we join the body and as we separate the arm part from the body part, we're going to be adding chains underneath. Just so, right, like our bodies are not 2-dimensional and you want the sweater to be a 3-dimensional sweater so you can wear it because we have depth to our bodies. So this is what it looks like from the front, from the back, they're all the same. It's pretty symmetrical back to front. Stitch markers are still there. You can see how the increases don't have little gaps in them, which is really nice. So now let's finish the yoke by separating the body part from the sleeve part. So this part will become the sleeve, this will become the body, and this is the other sleeve, and we're going to separate it here. So the easiest way to explain this is to actually fasten off at this point. The easiest way to do this, I think, if you haven't ended in a particularly symmetrical place, I've just sort of ended in the middle of a row, in the middle of a sleeve, I'm going to rejoin the yarn 2 stitches from a stitch marker at the sleeve. To rejoin the yarn, I'm going to create a slip knot, and I'm going to take the hook, so count 1, 2 from the stitch marker. I'm going to pull through, tighten the loop, pull through the stitch, chain 1 to join. I sort of want this to be a bit tidy, so I'm going to pull it a little bit tight. Now we're going to do a double crochet in that same stitch. And we're going to double crochet until we get to 1 stitch before the next stitch marker in the body panel. We've just done the double crochet right before the stitch marker, and instead of stitching into the stitch marker stitch, now we're going to do 10 foundation single crochets, just like the collar, and we're going to join with the other side of the sleeve to create the armhole. So if you remember the foundation single crochet, we're going to chain 1, and we're going to insert your hook under the 2 threads from the previous stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2. That's 1. We're going to do this 9 more times. Insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2. That's 2. Now we're going to join to the other side of the armhole. We're going to join 1 stitch after the stitch marker. We're going to join using a slip stitch. So insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, and then pull through. We're going to chain to secure that, and then we're just going to keep working. You see, you've got your armhole. Now we're going to keep on double crocheting until we get to the next stitch marker, which is here. So again, we've reached the stitch right before the stitch marker. We've done our double crochet. Now we're going to do 10 foundation single crochets to join the arms. Insert your hook. It is a little bit tricky to insert your hook. Pull, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2. That's 1. We're going to find the next stitch marker, which is here, and we're going to find the stitch right after that stitch marker, and we're going to join with a slip stitch. Slip. You're going to chain 1 to secure it, and then because we started that row in the second chain from that stitch, we have 1 stitch to do in a double crochet, and then we join with the first stitch in the row with a slip stitch. Chain twice. Now let's just take a look at what this looks like. Look how much progress we've made in such a short period of time. In just 7 rows and then we've done a row where we've joined the underarms. So you can see the sweater is taking shape. This is the top part, and now we're going to work on the body. Considering that it took 7 rows to get to around the mid-chest area, we'll probably wind up doing about 7 more rows for the body, and then we'll work on the arms. So what's great about the body is that you don't have to increase anymore. You're just double crocheting all the way down to the hem. So now we're just going to double crochet all the way around, around and around and around until you get to your desired length. Something to pay attention to as you get to the part where your body is joining the underarm is you can tighten up this gap here so it feels more secure by doing a double crochet and then looping into that first loop at the bottom when you join here. So this is what I mean. You push your hook through here, you insert your hook through here, and then you do your double crochet like that. You double crochet all the way across the bottom of this joint. And again, you see how this joining part is a little bit looser and a little bit less strong than other parts of the garment. I like to do this, it's the same idea. I do a double crochet in the last stitch. To join it in a stronger way with the body, I will loop my hook into the bottom part of that double crochet stitch, insert it directly into the first stitch of the body, pull through, pull through, pull through. It's a little bit stronger there, you can see. I'm going to repeat the same technique at the next point where the underarm is joined. So I'm going to insert my hook into the bottom of the last double crochet stitch, insert my hook into the first stitch, pull through, pull through, pull through, and that just creates a little bit more of a secure joint. It's not the prettiest, but this part is under your arm. So I'm not a professional crocheter. I just started crocheting about 5 months ago. So these are just some of the little things I figured out that may or may not be 100% sanctioned by the crochet gods. Again, where it joins, insert my hook in the next stitch, pull through, pull through, pull through. Join to the top with a slip stitch. So you can see how this sweater is taking shape. Remember, we've only done like 9 rows and you're already like halfway done with the body. This sweater is so quick to stitch up. At this point, you can even take out stitch markers. I find that the beginning of any crochet project is really feels weird because you really have to trust the process so much in the beginning, and then it's about this halfway point or like the 1/3 point where things really start to take shape and come together and you feel like your project is starting to look like your project. So again, we're just going to keep going. I think probably for 5 more rows we get a sweater that hits at the waist. I'm size 10, 12 women's in the US. Okay, we're checking in at 6 rows under the arm. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've just finished 6th row. I'm going to measure it from the shoulder to the current hem. So that is 15. I don't know if you can see. That is 15 inches from the shoulder to the hem. Now, something to remember is that we will also be adding a rib to the bottom, so it won't just, hang there at the end. We will put a rib at the bottom. Depending on how big you want your rib at the bottom to be, I tend to like a pretty thick rib, so I'll probably tack on another 3 inches or 2.5 or 3 inches at the bottom. I think I will actually do one more row of double crochet here, and then I will be pretty much done with the main part of the body before the rib. For the rib, because I would like the rib to be a little bit tighter than the rest of the sweater, because I do want it to cinch in a tiny bit, not a whole lot. I don't want it to look like a balloon or like a blousey sweater, but I do want it to cinch in a little bit. I'm going to switch to an 8mm hook. I was using a 10mm hook before. This is also a Susan Bates hook. Now, if you check your yarn with a 9mm hook, it has a gauge of 6.6 stitches for every 4 inches. And so to get about a 4-inch or a 3-inch rib with a slightly smaller hook, I'm going to eyeball it. I guess, we can always change it if we don't like it, but we're gonna guesstimate 6 stitches with an 8mm hook. So we're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're gonna chain one more just in case, and we're going to do the rib in these back loops. You can also do it from the side. I don't think the result is actually very different in a rib, but I prefer to start in the back, and we're going to do single crochets all the way down in the first row. We're going to do 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, to make sure this rib attaches to the sweater, we're just going to slip stitch it into the stitch at the bottom that it came out of. Slip stitch. Next, we're going to attach it to the next 2 stitches before going back up that rib. Yarn over and pull through, and insert a hook in the next stitch, yarn over and pull through. Now we're going to pull that loop through both loops, which creates a little bit of tension there and sort of does that thing where it pulls in the hem a little bit. Now we're going to go back up the rib. Hopefully this makes sense. And remember we're doing 6, so we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to start at the 6th one, and we're going back loop only, single crochet. Single crochet in the back loops only of the stitch. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, chain 1, turn. Now we're going to go again, back loop only, single crochet, 6 backwards down the rib. Back loop only, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The last one is always a little hard to get. It tends to be a little bit inset, but make sure you get the last one. Make sure when you do your ribs, you're doing the same number of stitches as you go along. Otherwise, I've been in situations where the rib gets smaller and bigger and you get a wavy, kind of disfigured rib. To join it to the sweater, instead of joining it at the base, I like to join it one over. So we're going to slip stitch in the next stitch, and then again, to add a little bit of tension, insert, pull through, insert, pull through. Now we're gonna pull that loop through the other 2 stitches that are on your hook. We're going to flip, and again we're going to do 6 single crochets, back loop only, all the way back up to the top of the rib. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Start in the 6th one to make sure you're always doing 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, chain 1, flip your work. You see how it's starting to resemble a rib? I love crocheting ribs. Feels so satisfying to me because it looks so neat. We're going to do the same thing going back down. 6 single crochets, back loop only, all the way down, and we're going to join it to the body, turn, go back up, back and forth, all the way around the hem of the sweater. So let's do a few together. Back loop only, single crochet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, join, pull through, turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 single crochets, back loop only, up the rib, chain 1, turn, 6 single crochets, back loop only, down the rib, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Attach it to the base of the sweater with a slip stitch. Now the next 2 stitches, pull through, pull through, pull the top stitch through the 2 stitches on your hook, flip, 6 stitches, back loop only, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now it's at this point, after doing a few rows of this rib, that I like to stop and just look to see if the tension is right with the rest of the body. Like, I don't want it to be pulling in too much, but I do want to create the tension that's at the bottom of the sweater. You have a couple of options if you feel like if the single crochet rib is pulling your sweater in too much. You can do a few things, and the easiest thing to do is to switch to a half double crochet rib. So the exact same technique, but instead of a single crochet, using a half double crochet in the back loop only, or you can alternate half double crochet, single crochet, going all the way around. I am pretty happy with the way that this rib is looking. It's pulling the bottom of the sweater in, so there is some tension, and so the sweater won't just hang there straight, but it's also not pulling it in too much. Some people on their wrist cuffs, they like to just use a slip stitch rib, which I find to be a little bit too tight, but I guess depending on how small your wrists are and how tight you like your ribs, there's a rib for everybody. So we're going to keep going with this all the way around, and I will meet you back where we started, and we can show you how to join it to the beginning of the rib. Okay, we're just coming to the end of our rib here. What I decided to do is in the back of the sweater, I decided to switch to a half double crochet rib, so there would be a little bit more give in the back of the sweater at the hem, which I think could be nice and might be interesting for how the sweater drapes. Never done this before, switch the rib in the middle. It seems to look okay, and so hopefully it'll just have a little bit more give at the end. So this is the last rib. We're just going to attach it here at the hem, and you can see as we turn it, there's still like a little bit of space, but I do think, how about we do one more and then we join it? So we'll do one more row. Okay, now we're going to join it to the beginning rib here. And to do that, I'm going to actually turn it inside out. We're going to work on the inside of the rib. I'm going to pull this through on this side. I'm going to pull through a loop here on this side. This is very unconventional what I'm doing. We're going to chain one. Now I'm going to do a slip stitch, but with the outside loops only. That'll create a mattress stitch type effect on the right side because we're working on the inside outside right now. So we're going to grab the outer loop, grab the outer loop. Where is it? Grab the outer loop. We're going to pull through and then just slip stitch. Outer loop, outer loop, pull through, slip stitch, 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 and now we're going to fasten off. And look how neat and tidy that is. It looks great. So we're going to fasten off here. I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail because I'm going to want to fasten it pretty securely. Oh, and I'm going to tie a knot here. And I will weave in the ends at the very end. But look, this is what it looks like on the right side. It's joined. So let's take a look at where we are so far. I started this video and making this sweater around like just before noon. And right now it is just coming up on 3 o'clock. So we have done the entire body of this chunky sweater in just a few hours. So it's totally possible to make a sweater in just one day. Let's do our sleeves now. To start, on the sleeve, we're going to start in the middle here. We're going to join the yarn here, and we're going to go around and around and around and around and make the sleeves, and then make a rib at the end, and then that'll be a sleeve. So to start a sleeve, we're going to make a slip knot like that, like how we've been making slip knots. And we're going to go back to our 10mm hook. I actually found another 10mm hook in my bag, and I might try to use that, although I'm not sure this is pointy enough. But let's give it a shot. If I don't like it, I will go back to the Susan Bates. So to join, let's turn the sweater. So this is the armhole. To join the yarn, let's find the middle of this joining chain. So it's about, let's see, about the middle. Doesn't have to be precise. So somewhere around here, let's join the yarn. We're going to pull through, and then we're going to chain one. Oh, this is not great. Oh, I see. This is not great because this sticks out so much. So I am going to go back to using the Susan Bates. We are going to use the same stitch. We're going to use a double crochet, and we're going to go around. And what we're going to do at these corners of the sleeves, we're going to do 2 together. So double crochet 2 together, just so we get rid of this weird angle in the sleeve and it becomes more of a normal sleeve hole. So we've chained 1, we're going to chain 2. Going to double crochet around, and we're going to do a few reductions in the first few rows, and then we'll proceed in doing 1 regular row, 1 row with reduced stitches, 1 regular row, 1 row with reduced stitches, etc., until we get to our desired sleeve circumference. So as we're getting closer to the corner here, I think we have 1 more, so let's do 1 more. Okay, so now we're at the 2 corner stitches. We're going to double crochet 2 together. So we're going to start one of the double crochets. If I can nudge my hook in there. Why is it so? We're going to start one of the double crochets. You have 2 loops on your hook because you've gone through, yarned over, pulled through 2. Now we're going to start the second double crochet. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through all 3. And that way, you smooth out that awkward corner. I actually want to reduce 4 times in this row. So in addition to reducing there, I'm going to reduce in the next one as well. And now we're going to go around as normal until we reach 3 stitches before the next corner. So here's the next corner here. So this is the corner. So I'm actually going to back up. I've gone too far. So we're going to decrease here because we decreased twice on the other side. So we'll decrease twice on this side. So 1, 2, pull through 3. And this is the corner. So we're going to do 1, sometimes it can be hard to figure out where the stitches are, but I think it might be here. Two, pull through all 3. Crochet is very forgiving, thank goodness. And so sometimes when I haven't been able to figure things out, I just sort of wing it, and it turns out to work. This is one of those things because I learned how to crochet from watching YouTube and from reading crochet guides online. But, you know, back in the day when you would learn something, you would learn it from a person, either a teacher or a tutor or a parent or somebody who is sitting right there with you that you could ask questions to. But when you learn things online, you don't have that instant feedback. You don't always have someone to ask questions to. So I've just sort of tried to figure it out, and I've Googled a lot, but I generally, I think if it looks okay, then it's fine. But this is what it looks like after you finish the row. So it does look quite smooth. Unless it looks really messed up, I usually won't go back to fix it, but it seems to be okay. So now we're going to go around, and instead of decreasing 4 times in this row, the next row we're going to decrease twice, so once in each corner. So again, going around, double crochet, and when you get to where the corner sort of was, let's do a decrease there to help smooth out that corner even more. So that will be here. So decreasing is double crochet 2 together. So we're going to start a double crochet, pull through 1 time, don't do the whole thing. Now we're going to start the next double crochet, pull through 1 time, and now we pull through all 3 loops on your hook. That's a decrease. So from 2 stitches, you get 1. The next corner will be down here. Okay, now we're going to do double crochet 2 together. So do a half of your double crochet and then start another one, and then now pull through all 3 loops. We're going to slip stitch to join to the beginning of that row. Chain twice. So the thing that I've learned from making as many sweaters as I've tried to make over the past few months is that reducing rows on sleeves can be a little bit tricky, because if you reduce too much at once, the sleeve becomes too narrow too quickly, and then you wind up with this weird shape where you've reduced a ton and then you're stuck doing a very narrow sleeve the rest of the time. So you get this weird like jester sleeve shape. What I found works for me is reducing 4 stitches in the first row, 2 stitches in the next row, and then alternating no reduce rows and reducing by 2. So now we're going to do a row where we do not reduce at all. We just go around fully in double crochets, and the row after that we will reduce 2 again. So the same way we just did now, where we do 2 double crochet 2 togethers, if that makes sense. So we're going to go around 1 time now, doing double crochet, no reductions, no changes. Slip stitch to join, chain 2. So that was a row with no reductions. And look, the sleeve is coming along well. Let's just pull that loop up so we can take a look. Sort of this crocheting by ear that I've been doing. It's not really crocheting, but crocheting by sight, intuitive crochet, I like to say to myself, is that when you do these top-down sweaters, you can always stop. You should always stop and just check to make sure things are going the way that you want them to be going. So if something looks weird, then you can undo a row and fix it, but you can see how the sleeve here is reducing in a really natural looking way. It doesn't look like it's, jagged or reducing too fast and then going straight. So the next row, I think that we are safe to do another round of reductions, and the sleeve isn't actually as wide as I thought it might be. Maybe because the chunky yarn does reduce so quickly. So originally when we started, right, like look at that, that would have been the sleeve width, but because we've now reduced 4 stitches and then 2 stitches, we've already reduced 6 stitches. That's great, and so we're at a pretty reasonable sleeve width. So let's reduce one more row, which is 2 stitch reductions, and we can do that together, and then we'll check again to see how we are liking our sleeve width. So let's eyeball it. Looks like it would be around here. So it'll be about 6 stitches in. So let's reduce here. So we're going to do double crochet 2 together. So do a double crochet, pull through the first thing, keep 2 loops in your hook, start another, go into the next stitch, pull up, pull through 2. Now you have 3 loops in your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3. So that reduces 2 stitches into 1 stitch. Let's double crochet all the way around to the next corner. You can see that's where we've reduced before. So we'll do 2 more double crochets and then we'll reduce. Okay, now we're going to double crochet 2 together. So we're going to start a double crochet, pull through the first time, keep 2 loops, start another double crochet, pull through the first 2, now pull through all 3. Now you've taken 2 stitches and made it into 1. Now we're going to finish this row and check as we go along to see if the sleeve is the width we want it to be. Let's pull that up so we don't lose it. But let's take a look at the sleeve. We can probably reduce another row. So let's do another row of not reducing just so it doesn't get too angular. And then we'll do 1 row where we reduce 2 stitches, and then we'll probably just keep going to the end without reducing any further. Get at this sleeve. I think that could work. It is still a little bit big, but we will put a cuff at the end. I do tend to like making slightly longer than 3/4 sleeves for my sweaters. I don't like going all the way to the wrist because I find that the sweaters get really heavy because of crochet and how much yarn we use. So I like to go 3/4, and then I like to put a rib at the end so it's very wearable and you don't constantly have to pull up your sleeve. So these are the proportions of the sweater. We're going to go ahead and double crochet all the way to the end up to how long I want my sleeve to be. So I'll do that and I'll see you guys at the end of the sleeve where we will do a cuff. Okay, I took a break, ate an omelet for a very late lunch, had a cup of tea, and I came back and I did a couple of more rows. I did end up reducing 1 more row, and now the sleeve length from the neck to the end of the sleeve is 16 inches, which is where I want it to be for adding an additional 2.5 inches in ribbing at the end of the sleeve. So that's what we're going to do now. The ribbing we do at the end of the sleeve will be pretty much identical to the ribbing that we've done at the hem, except this time I will not switch it to a half double crochet rib. I'll just keep it as a single crochet rib all around the wrist. Well, halfway down the wrist, the edge of the cuff. The edge, yeah, the cuff, that's what we call it. Again, we're going to switch down to an 8mm hook because we do want the rib to be a bit more snug. So here I've chained 1 here. We're going to chain 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we're going to do 7 so we can have 6. And we're going to do single crochet in the back loops, all the way down. Do I have 6 here? I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Why don't I have 6? I think I need to chain one more. Let's count again. So we're going to chain 6, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and an extra one that we don't touch. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Great. Single crochet. I do it in the back bumps of the stitches. Sometimes with yarn like this, it's easy to go through the yarn, so I'm trying to be careful to not split the yarn too much. So we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, one more. And now we're going to attach it to the base. That will be here. Slip stitch to get it secure and to create tension. We're going to go into the next 2 and slip stitch those together. Now, if you remember from doing the hem, we're going to do back loop only, single crochet all the way around. So let's do that now. But we're going to make sure we keep it even. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going to start the 6th. We're going to turn and again single crochet, back loop only. The thing I will say about cuffs is, I think I mentioned before that some people like to do cuff ribbing as slip stitches, and I find doing that all the way around makes the cuff too tight, especially because I end my sleeves around the mid forearm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. But just to make sure that the single crochet cuffs aren't too loose, we will do a few rows and then we'll just take a look to make sure. And if they are too loose, we may do a few rows, just to improvise a few rows of slip stitch rib, just to tighten it up a little bit. I think maybe we will need to work in a few slip stitch rib rows because it's not cinching in as much as I would like. I don't want it to be totally like cinched in or tight at this cuff, but I also don't want it to be too loose. So how about we work in a couple of alternating rows, slip stitch rib in between the single crochet. So let's try here. A slip stitch rib is the same idea really. So we've chained one, we're turning. So instead of doing single crochet in the back loop, we're just going to slip stitch in the back loop, which is a shorter height-wise stitch. And so it could help cinch things in just a little. So we'll do this going towards the sweater, slip stitching, and then going away from the sweater, single crochet for a few rows. Okay. Okay, so let's pull this up and take a look. So you can see here we were doing just single crochet ribs, and then here we started doing alternating single crochet and slip stitch ribs, and you can see it's way tighter. It's just, you You can even see like the fabric is sort of pulling it on itself, but you can also see at the base it's a little bit more gathered, which just need like a little bit more tension than this. I don't think I will go all the way around because I do think it will wind up too tight if I go all the way around. I might just do a couple more rows with the slip stitch just to create that extra pull that I want, so it's not too loose at the cuff. So let's keep going. You can see it's a lot tighter, even on the inside. Even on the inside, you can see that it's a lot tighter. So these are the single crochet ribs, and these are the single crochet alternating with the slip stitch ribs. It feels a lot more dense too, and it's a lot harder. It doesn't stretch as much, there's not as much give, so it might be a little bit more uncomfortable, to be honest. So I think that'll be it for the slip stitch rows. Let's just go back to single crochet back loop only ribs. See, we are almost done. We just need one more row so it doesn't feel like there's too much of a gap. 6. We're going to join. We're going to, by pulling this loop through this side, because I think cuffs are like a little harder to work inside out, we're just going to work on this side, then we'll pull the loop through on the other side. So let's chain 1 to secure this, and we're going to do slip stitches on the inside loop only. Well, I guess back loop on the row closest to you, and front loop on the row furthest from you. We're going to slip stitch. So like a modified mattress style stitch, but without using a needle, since you're already holding a crochet hook. I love no-sew projects, not because I don't like sewing, but because, hey, like I'm already holding a crochet hook. What can I do with this thing I already have in my hand without having to cut and start a new thread and thread a needle and all that stuff? There we go. Okay. Maybe we can do one more here just to close that gap. Okay, now we're gonna fasten off, but I want to leave like a little bit of a tail because I want to pull this through the other side. Where is it? So we're going to pull this through to the other side, and let's knot it on this side so it doesn't show on the outside of the sweater. And that is one cuff finished. Okay, it is just coming up on 4:15. I have been working on this since just before 12 o'clock. So we've done the body, we've done the bottom hem, and you can sort of see the difference here between the front hem and the back hem, because I did the front hem with the front rib with a single crochet rib and the back rib with a half double crochet, because you see how the back drops a little bit. It's kind of nice. There's like a drape there. We've done one sleeve. We have done one sleeve, and one cuff. Oh, I need to tuck this in. We've done one sleeve and one cuff, and all we have left to do for this sweater that we are trying to finish in one day is one more sleeve, which we will replicate this sleeve exactly, and then we want to finish off the neckline with just a short rib all around, or depending on the vibe, after I finish this sleeve, maybe we'll just do a very simple single crochet, a few rows around of single crochet. We'll see if we want to keep the neckline wide or if we want it to be more of a crew neck sweater. Okay, so let's get started on this sleeve. We're going to do it exactly like this sleeve, so I may not show it on the video, but again, we start with one row where we do 4 decreases, the next one we do 2, then we do one row with no decreases, one row with 2 decreases, and alternating until you get to the sleeve width you want, and then you just keep on going around in double crochets, and then you do the cuff. It's very straightforward. Okay, I finished the second sleeve the exact same way I did the first sleeve. It is now just coming up on 5 o'clock. It is 4:58 p.m. and you can tell, I think, that if you've been watching this whole video, I'm starting to lose light. So I may have to do the collar and the finishing touches with an overhead lamp, which might just be a little bit yellow of a light. So maybe I can do that really quickly now before the sun sets in half an hour. So we started just before 12 o'clock. It is now coming up on 5, and we have done the body of the sweater. We have done 2 sleeves. We've done the hem. So we are like 95% of the way done with a sweater. Okay, let's make the collar. Now, what do we think about the collar? I don't think I want to make it too thick, so I might actually just do, okay, I think we will do a rib, because otherwise it may just wind up looking a little bit unfinished and unbalanced if you have ribs on the bottom and on the cuffs and not on the collar. So to do the collar rib, we will start just on the side here, and we'll do it pretty much the same that we've done the cuff and the hem rib. So we'll start with a slip knot, and we will use the smaller hook. So in this case, it's the 8mm because we've been using a 10mm hook throughout the entire body. What's great about this is that it gives us the opportunity to crochet over these ends, and we don't have to weave them in at the end. We crochet them in. So let's do that. Let's start here. Actually, let's start one back here. Don't want, how high do we want this collar to be? I think not too high. Maybe just 4. If this is 6, then 4 is a little bit smaller. Maybe we do 4. Okay. Let's give it a try. We are going to work around counterclockwise around the collar, I think. In a single crochet rib using 4 stitches as the height. A rib crew neck always reminds me of classic preppy Ralph Lauren J. Crew type sweater. And this one, because it's so chunky and shiny, it's not really preppy, but having a few preppy elements is kind of nice. Sort of toes the line in between a soft, cozy, a little bit like kind of girly even because of this soft, fluffy, cloud-like yarn with some preppy elements, which I like. Okay, we just fastened off the collar. I am going to knot this on the inside, again, just so it doesn't show on the outside. I realize the back of the neck is like a mess of joined thread, so I may have to do a little bit more weaving in here than I thought I would. And we did it. There you go. We crocheted an entire sweater in one day, and actually just an afternoon. So not too bad. I did not follow a pattern, so this is not like a perfect sweater, but this is the kind of sweater that I love to make. Something that feels cozy, that feels homemade, and that's something that you can either wear yourself or give to somebody else. I think it's very sweet, it's very soft. I'm really happy with it, and it only took a few hours. You could definitely watch TV while you're making something like this. I watched a lot of YouTube videos while I was doing this. It came out really cute, I think. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next crochet video. Bye bye!